people don't realize that.
Welcome back, everyone. Talking with Tim. Tim, take us about planning for maybe your mother who is aging or your father, nursing home care, that kind of thing. Powers of attorney or trusts, wills, and lots of interesting stuff to talk about. Kelly is on the line. Let's go to Kelly. Hello, Kelly.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah.
Hi, Kelly. Go right ahead.
My question is, what are the pros and cons of reverse mortgage for your parents, as they get older, to help with their care if they're homeowners?
Right. Well, Kelly, you just happened to get right into my wheelhouse, because I had a son that came into my office this afternoon to talk about his mom, who's a client or has been a client, and she lives. Unfortunately, she started out 6 years ago and having people coming in eight for 12 hours a day, and she's got a house. And when she walked into my office, she had $300,000, and now they're down to $17,000.
Wow.
5 years ago, from 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And so the son comes in and says, "Now what do we do? Because we're running out of money, and we've got the house." And I said, "Well, you can." Basically what a reverse mortgage is that the person that if they're planning on staying and living in there, then they can borrow against the house. So let's say Kelly's mom, her mom and dad, they need an additional, say, $2,000 a month, because they've got expenses, they got maybe some caregiving cost or whatever. So what they do is they give the reverse mortgage company a mortgage on their house. And then in turn, the mortgage company says, well, we're either going to pay you a lump sum for that, or we're going to pay it out on an income stream for you. But you don't owe us any money until you die, or until you move out of the house, or until you sell the house, is the way that works.
But they own the house.
Yes, mom and dad own the house.
Mom and dad own the house?
Mom and dad own the house. All the reverse mortgage has is they've got a mortgage on the property, just like all of us do, or some of us do, or most of us do.
Right.
We got a mortgage on the house, and we're paying the mortgage company. The difference here is you're not paying the mortgage company any monthly payment. They just have a lien on the property, so that if you move out of the house and you're gone for more than 12 months, then they can call the mortgage due. And also if you die, of course, then it becomes due. Or if you sell the house, of course, then they have a lien, and then the mortgage becomes due then. So that's when you pay off. And the good part about that is is that let's assume that the house declines in value, which happened a few years ago.
Right.
That they can't go back. The only thing that the mortgage company can get is what they got out of the house. They can't, if there's any deficiency, from what is owed versus what the house sold for. Mm-hmm. That's it. There's no recourse. They can only have recourse against the house.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the good part about it is. Of course, the not so good part about it is often for reverse mortgages, traditionally they've been sort of expensive, some of closing cost and whatever.
Right.
That's been one problem. The second problem is that most of our clients aren't getting reverse mortgages, and you would think, well, why not? Well, because most of our clients they tend to be, are they going to be able to stay at home? If they can't stay at home, they're not going to be able to get a reverse mortgage.
Right.
So it's really, and actually reverse mortgages really, if my history is right, they really started about 30 or 40 years ago in the Northeast, when people were, land rich, and cash poor, and property taxes were high, and these older people wanted to stay in their house, and they're going, we don't have enough money to pay for the taxes and everything else, so they were able to supplement their income that way, and they would not have to pay their mortgage back until they moved out of the house or they died. And that wasn't such a bad idea for people that when their house was going up in value 4 or 5 or 8% a year,
right?
Back in those days, it wasn't such a big deal for them. Well, of course, the market has changed.
So, Can you say if they're good or bad, or it obviously depends
It's
on
really,
your-
it depends. The key thing, I think, is, again, it gets back to, you would think, gosh, this lawyer, he must do that all the time. And the answer is no, because, we have to plan not only for keep people being able to live and stay in the house. A lot of times that's not a good option for them. So you may wind up getting a reverse mortgage in place, and then dad can't stay in the house anymore, and then what do you do then? You spend a lot of money, getting a reverse mortgage in place, and then 9-12 months later, dad has to leave, can't stay there anymore. I think it's for people that are going to be there and their health allows them to stay there for several years.
Okay, good. All right, thank you. Let's go to Taylor. Hello, Taylor.
Good evening, Ben, and good evening to Mr. Takis. He's one of the most down-to-earth, honest guys I've heard speak from a standpoint of a lawyer in a long, long time. And based on the other request, if there's a free dinner involved, whether it be a financial advisor, a trust advisor, you better go to McDonald's and buy your own dinner. Because
You better watch out.
Yeah.
More than likely wind up with a cookie cutter plan, whereas whether it be financial or anything else, whereas what he does has got thousands of fingers and options, and someone has to really be concerned with that client. Now, my question is, on real estate, as you get older, there are certain things for lower income that give you a break. Different counties and different states have different rules on that. But if you have a home in a revocable trust, do you have to forego that since I'm guessing I know the answer, but I wanted to ask for sure.
Yeah, I think the short answer that you're looking at is no. That you would not be foregoing that, but what we'll do is I'll have to sort of set the stage a little bit as to what the revocable trust is. And this is something that we often do with our estate planning, and it's part of an estate planning tool that we have where you have, let's say, a husband and a wife, a mom and, they come in and they want to do an estate planning and they own a house and they own other assets, and we talk to them about, well, one of the ways that we want to look at is how to avoid probate of your estate. And, in order to do that, often there are various ways of doing that. But we might want to say, well, we're going to recommend that you set up a revocable living trust. And essentially what that means is that you got your husband and wife client who own a house and maybe and other assets as well. And so they create a trust, and it's a paper, it's like an estate plan document, in which they name themselves as trustees of their own property. So here's Ben and his wife going, okay, how do I do this, Tim? This is very interesting. So I title my property, you and your wife title your house, in the name of yourselves as trustees.
Okay.
And you're going, okay, well, this makes no sense to me. And then it's like, well, wait a minute, you haven't finished yet, right?
It did cross my mind.
Yeah, it's like, well, this doesn't make any sense at all, and it's like, okay, so why would you do that? Okay, so here you are, and Ben goes, oh, wait a minute, is that still my property? And I say, well, yeah, because you're also the beneficiaries of your own trust. So that means, and it's because it's revocable. It means that you can end it at any time. So for all intents and purposes, it's still your property. So what's the point? You're the person that makes the trust. You're the person that transfers your assets to the trust. You're your own trustee and your own beneficiary. And it's like, okay, so you do that, all right, and then Ben and his wife were killed in an automobile accident. Okay, now what happens? All right, Ben's children, they take over as trustee, because you can't be a trustee when you're dead.
Right. So
okay.
it goes to them.
It goes to so under the document, the trust document, your children become trustees, and then they're the ones that then are empowered or entrusted to carry out your wishes, because it says in that trust document, well, at the death of the survivor of us, then I want you to distribute or transfer the trust assets in these ways, maybe to the 3 children in equal shares, maybe to a trust for a disabled or a special needs child, maybe to something else. And all of that is done outside of probate.
Right.
You don't go through probate at all.
Okay.
You don't have to take a will to the judge and have the will judge say, okay, well, you've got authority to act on your behalf, on the behalf of the estate.
Right.
It's all done through that trust. That's the way that works.
And that's the benefit?
That's the primary benefit of a revocable trust.
Okay.
Now, if Ben and his wife become disabled or incapacitated, then the children take over as trustees as well.
Okay.
Because sometimes that happens. Sometimes you want asset protection for your children, so you keep the assets in the trust. So mom and dad pass away, and then the children become beneficiaries, and you write into the trust document that says, well, because my son is married to somebody that we don't think this is going to last for very long, then we want to make sure that he just gets his inheritance in little dribs and drabs, and the document provides for that as well, and nobody has to go to court to have that done. It's all set up.
So
it has a lot of flexibility.
Now that's interesting to me. That part's very interesting to me. So let's say I don't do all of that.
Yeah.
And sadly, my wife and I are killed in an accident. The house goes to our kid anyway, doesn't it?
It does.
It would go to our children anyway.
Uh-huh.
But this would allow us what? More flexibility as far as...
For one is that if, let's say that you wanted to set up special provisions for how your children or how you get their assets, and you didn't want to, you could always do a will that has those provisions in it, but people go, well, I don't want my estate to go to probate. Well, here's your solution then. Here's how we're going to set this up. So you avoid you avoid that cost. So you've got that something set up there. For your children. So yeah, it's going to go to your children anyway, and we all know that, and the clients do that too. But they're going, well, if you pass away and you have assets which are subject to probate, then somebody gets appointed. Then your estate is incurring the cost, of setting up a probate.
And that scenario fascinates me. That all right, so I'm concerned, which I'm not at all, but your child gets married and you're concerned about that. You want to somehow control.
Yeah.
That's essentially what it is.
Yeah.
You're gone,
right?
But you want to control what happens to that after you're gone.
Mm-hmm.
Could you write that in your will? I want, only such and such amount to go every year to my...
You could put that in your will, or you can put that in your whatever estate plan that you have that says, as long as that asset then is there, and you've got a trustee that is in charge of that asset that says, this is what I want happens. Now, why should you also have a revocable trust? And if I have time,
she's saying we have to take a break. All right, so why don't we take a break and we'll come back and we'll continue that.
Right.
So,
so this is our little. We don't usually have a cliffhanger, but there's our cliffhanger here.
It's our cliffhanger. Taylor, thank you for the call as always. We'll take a break. Be back right after this.
Right.